A very good morning to everyone. So we're back to the panel discussion. And today, I'll be the moderator. My name is Matthew Kwan. I'm from Fortinet, Director of Marketing. And we have here today my esteemed panelist, Meg Esmiller, Global Chief Information Security Officer from World Vision International, and Christopher Lake, Director for Nanyang Technological University. Now, we know cyber attack is a top threat for most organizations today. Many business leaders are putting a full stop for their operation after affected by the cyber attacks or threats. The problem is not that they most haven't been investing in the cybersecurity tools that they are buying, but they aren't just prepared. They just aren't prepared for the unprecedented situations that are affecting the business. And amidst this threat landscape, they're really struggling a lot, all right, to keep business as usual. And cyber attack always comes as a shock because it wasn't expected, and they aren't actually prepared for it. So this panel session aims to deliver the insights, content, and on how to build a sustainable future for your businesses, as well as getting ready with all what the future can hold. So I'll start off with the very first question for our panelists. What are the changes and adaptations in relation to people, process and technology, remote networking, cloud adoption, webification, appification that you have taken so far, to facilitate business as usual since the start of the trade war and, of course, the outbreak of COVID-19? Maybe I'll start with Chris.
All right. So COVID, in fact, is something that everyone didn't expect. And interestingly, this just came earlier this year. And in NTU, we have been working on our digital transformation. In fact, we were lucky to have started before this COVID hit us. So what has drastically changed in terms of the learning is that we have to ramp up the capability of doing online learning. And this is not something that we have not this capability, but COVID actually accelerates this to a level that we are almost able to do all e-learning through online lecture. So it actually also triggered us to work in a very agile way. And never before that we also faced with a new level of challenge. Like when we were starting using those e-learning platform, including conferencing, we were faced with initial struggle of some potential attacks. Like we commonly known there's certain Zoom bombing situation. Mm-hmm. So very much that we also have to equip our faculty as well as students to be more careful when they go online. And definitely Zoom also came in to improve their security posture. So these are a couple of the immediate things that I can think of that COVID has actually drive a lot of change in terms of people, of course, in terms of the technology aspect.
Right. Thanks, Chris. Maybe Meg?
I'll agree with Chris. This situation, COVID-19, when it started, it really accelerated a lot of effort, not just with IT, but also business as well. The move to the cloud, the move to conferencing services, as different ways of doing things, right? That maybe in the past we rely, in a smaller percentage, but now we rely, I would say, about north of 50%, Mm-hmm. So endpoint security become very important as ever. The capability to detect, respond, and mitigate, situations, security events, potential data breaches, potential other types of incidents, the acceleration of other processes, the building of processes such as crisis management, mm-hmm. Major problem management. That used to be like take a back seat, but now it became very important. Also, the supply chain of IT assets that also changed. The way we work with our partners, right? Part of our people, technology, and process. Supplier management and vendor management. We've also look at many ways to make sure that we're getting the best of contracts that we have, whether existing or new contracts, and more and more partners are open to different way of relationship or different type of relationship, different licensing scheme, different kind of arrangement of working together. But probably before, because things are so normal, we take for granted whatever works before, it will work 10 years, 20 years. But now people start to realize, we need to be more agile. I think Christopher mentioned that earlier. Being agile, high velocity IT has become very important.
Right, thanks, Max. So I think from a Fortinet perspective, when it comes to people, we really need to heighten the level of awareness, all right, of cybersecurity, especially when a lot of us, including myself, are working from home today, more than half the time. And a lot of us would take security for granted, working from a home network, which more often than not is not really exactly very secure. And when it comes to process, a lot of companies also start to realize that they are not actually optimized for security, and they actually need to relook, with a certain auditing process, so that they can then streamline, their business operations along with security, not as an afterthought, but as an integral part. And of course, when it comes to technology, where they need to actually incorporate other security technologies that they have not adopted before to tackle all the new threats coming online. And we see like new threats coming, evolving, and now they even have very advanced threats like polymorphic threats that would circumvent a lot of a traditional cybersecurity posture that most organizations are currently adopting or having, that they need to evolve. So come to the next question. We have also witnessed a spike in cyber crimes, with significant portion capitalizing on these challenging times, especially targeting at the vulnerabilities of technologies adopted by many organizations to innovate and transform their business. How has it affected your prior cybersecurity plan, and how has it evolved over this period of time?
Okay, I like that question very much, Matthew. Just to start an example, we know a lot of ransomware and malware families who's been in vacation for many years, and all of a sudden they resurfaced with new tactic, techniques, and procedures, and new campaigns. Capitalizing on, for example, Zoom, and new email systems that, quite, I would say, intuitive, right? How it affected my organization really, it brought back again the focus of cybersecurity to the user, securing the people and what activities people do. It's no longer like back end. We have a data center somewhere, we secure it, and as long as the data there, the applications there are secure, we're secure. Okay. All of a sudden, it pivot our attention to the end user, the data that the user have, the patterns of business activity. So, for example, there are offices that say, okay, can we approve something via Zoom? Good questions, right?
Yeah.
Because clicking on approvals, purchase orders, etc., that could be part of the tactic, techniques, or procedures of the bad guys, right?
Right.
So that's really good user awareness kind of conversation. Your users are also becoming aware of situations that HR, performance reviews can be fake, purchase orders can be fake, approval for tickets can be fake, they can be used for campaigns. So it really brought the focus into that human intelligence as well, part of the spectrum, supported by technology, of course. So this goes hand in hand, the computer intelligence, and then the human intelligence goes hand in hand. It cannot be just one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So adding on to Mac's statement about human, I guess we all know that human is always the weakest link. And we acknowledge that during this period, we are seeing also targeted phishing attacks using the COVID-19 teams, and pretty much targeting the user weakness, because this is a period where most user is very anxious and they want to learn about what's the update. As such, the attackers or the hackers really know that this is the soft spot. So we relook into how we want to engage our user. In fact, over a period of time, we have been sending out a security advisory to our community to warn them and to be more careful over the different email that gets sent to them. Not just to be so trusting that you click on everything, every attachment that seems to be so real. And also at the same time, there could be situation where too good to be true, that you'll be given some financial support during this period. Yeah. And again, we constantly want to gear up our user awareness. Of course, on the back end, we also strengthening. You mentioned about what will bring forward. We also took a accelerated pace in upscaling our capability. For example, scaling out our VPN connectivity, because during the time of the circuit breaker in Singapore, we actually have to support more users than usual. And you can imagine, how can you do that with hardware? So we are actually actively exploring a very scalable solution that leverage on cloud. And these are some of the things that actually accelerate our transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, from Fortinet's perspective, really, we see a lot of companies during this challenging period of time, webifying their applications, amplifying their business operations. And this actually brings about, of course, transformation and innovation that's required, but it brings about also a new slew of security problems that they have never encountered before, and which goes to drive Fortinet to work, with a lot of customers to ensure that, the very same security safety net that they have built for their organization in a traditional way in the past is also ported across to all the new technologies and platforms that they have to adopt and adapt, right, to actually face a very challenging times like this. So I guess moving forward, it's very important for organizations to realize it's not just about adoption of technology, to evolve, survive and thrive, but to also ensure that, cybersecurity is always very key and top of mind, when they are embarking on this exercise. So let's move on to the third, question here. So based on your experience, gentlemen are, very experienced in your field, and what would be advice, to other fellow technology leaders like yourself, on dealing on how they can better deal with future crises, given the lessons that, we have learned so far, on technology adoption and process changes, and to drive, transformation and innovation. So how should they approach, their cybersecurity strategy and tactics to be a lot more resilient, especially during this period of time? So let me start with Chris.
All right. So the crisis actually means that it's a test to our BCP, business continuity. And in fact, during the period of, again, the circuit breaker, we acknowledge that we have to activate some form of BCP. So truly, it's really a test on how company is resilient during such a period. Of course, during the crisis itself, we learn how to be composed, stay cool, stay calm, because there's so many dynamics of change. I recall that we were scrambling to also get approval of certain services to be rolled out quickly in view of the surge of the demand. And I thanks to my team being able to raise to occasion. They were really working through the weekend to get some approval scanning done. So these are, I think, good lesson that we learned, that we need to be very agile. In fact, in the space of cybersecurity, it's so dynamic that we can't be just reacting. So we have to also proactively anticipating. So again, learning from this lesson, the crisis, right? We actually emerge, and we actually learn from the experience. I mean, reviewing through whether our BCP, the way how we move quickly, and then continue the momentum. And I think this should be a good takeaway. I know it's a very stressful period for a lot of people, but let's put this opportunity into something that we can benefit us to sustain ourselves in the longer run. And I foresee that this is going to run a little bit over a period of time, I'm pretty sure.
All right, maybe Mac?
There are two lessons I could share. One is that old that saying, if you want peace, prepare for war.
Yeah.
Right? So in cybersecurity, it's important. You always have to be on your toes. A good response playbook is important. Whether you're dealing with data breaches, cyber attack, or disaster, crisis management type of event, there should be a good playbook. And of course, your playbook is contextual and always continually improve. It cannot be static.
Right.
Your playbook must be contextual and continuously improve. Okay. The other lesson I'd like to learn is a lesson in grace and humility. What especially my organization, I can speak for whether that's true, is really grace from each other, because this is a high anxiety, high stress period, right? But with grace and more, we become more forgiving, Because of that, we're able to prioritize the work that need to be done. We are able to prioritize our investments. We're able to, like Christopher was saying, to accelerate some, like endpoint security, accelerate that. Moving to the cloud, accelerate that. People have become more welcoming because they know we're in the same boat together. We have to do this together, and what makes sense to do. And a lot of these things make sense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the two lessons that,
Okay.
very important.
Right. Thanks, Max. So I think from my perspective is that during these very challenging times, we see a lot of, again, clients who are scrambling actually to really show up their cybersecurity posture amidst the technology, tools or platforms that they deploy. Very often they forget that is a short-term fix, and there is a long-term plan that they really need to look at as well. That while I adopt, for example, to protect my endpoints, because I will have a lot more endpoints right now with a lot of users working from home. But what about the other aspect of my platforms, right? My applications or business process that I'm going to webify. How am I going to protect those over a long run? Because like what Chris has correctly mentioned, this is not going to be ending anytime soon in the way we foresee. It's going to be a lot longer. So how do we then put in the tactics to solve the current cybersecurity problems, along with a strategy to resolve, long-term plans and even way into the future, all right? That they could then prepare themselves and protect themselves. Not in the previous scenario that we have said, everybody was just scrambling and just survival mode basically. And I think if we have a proper tactic strategy put in place, I think that will serve everybody a whole lot better. So we will probably move on to the last question here. Are there any cyber security trends that will be key to protecting your organization, not only during this challenging period of time, but even into the future? Because we do not know. COVID-19 could be the very first, but it will not probably be the last. There will be many probably future pandemics that we could not foreseen or even predict. They'll come along our way. So what do you think are the trends that you think is very key in this case?
Okay, you want me to go first?
Yeah, Mac.
Okay. Two trends I see. One is threat intelligence, coupled with threat hunting, bug hunting, etc. Understanding what are the threats, who's out there to get you, right? A second is that AI and machine learning, because that really accelerates your detection and response capabilities. So that's really, I don't even see it as a trend. I think it's really something that will be normal, moving forward. I couldn't imagine any CISO not looking at that and making that a permanent fixture, in their arsenal. So it's a must-have, because your adversaries have that and you don't. If you don't, then you know who's losing, right?
True. Okay, probably Chris.
So I would think about again, cloud security is not something new, but with this COVID situation, we all acknowledge that it's now a given that everyone will use cloud. But I would see a trend where how can we then safely use, especially from a third-party kind of assessment standpoint, because when you really use cloud, it's almost saying that you are putting your data to a third party. So there's this need to really beef out how do we manage a third party in a very sustainable way. On top of that, with the I would say data security is also the other big aspect, because with more people actually working remotely from home, we have to then go back to our basics. Where are our crown jewels, which mainly are the data, right? And I would see that there's again a trend where we are beefing out the way we are managing our crown jewel, which is data. So these are the two areas that I would say that is going to be something most organizations is going to put their focus in.
Right, thanks, Chris. So I think I'd like to expand a bit more on the piece on AI and machine learning. As much as we want to rely on these two pieces of tech to better protect ourselves and get ahead of the criminals, but the criminals are also using the very same tool that we're talking about, AI and ML, to help them breach any organization that's not prepared. Because as we know, all these criminal organizations today are extremely organized, and they are actually very well funded. All right, and some are even state, driven. So it is important that when we look at AI and ML, it's not just about putting it in and then leaving it alone, but making sure that this AI and ML is truly effective. And how do we make it effective? Where we look at the partners that we work with. Are they into the field of AI and ML in the first place in the correct manner? Because it's all about data pool, right? About sampling and all that to drive the machine learning engine. And how do we make sure that the AI learning process is refined on an ongoing basis? So I think it's important that when we look at these two pieces of tech, all right, we need to work with the right partners and have the right process put in place so that AI and ML is truly effective. And it's not just a piece of tech you put in and you leave it on the side. So I guess moving forward, AI and ML will continue to evolve. I mean, it's still in its early days, but it will, like what Chris has mentioned, it will become table stakes. It's not going to be a nice to have anymore because humans are just limited by our abilities to cope with all these millions of attacks that's coming online. We simply do not have the kind of manpower to deal with it, which is why MI and ML has to be also coupled with another third element that I'll bring into the picture, which is automation. So automation would then take out that grievous pain that a lot of organizations are suffering in terms of manpower, the crunch that everybody is feeling today. Even as Fortinet, our organization that's expanding, we have challenges recruiting talents. There just isn't enough to go around. So I think the key tech like AI, ML, and automation are very key to the ongoing protection of against cyber criminals for many organizations, and even dealing with pandemic situations. So I'd like to have closing comments from you gentlemen before we end the panel. Probably start with Chris.
Well, I would say that the pandemic has created a new dynamics. First, as I earlier mentioned, in terms of how do we deal with crisis, I would say that it actually gives us an opportunity to take a step back and to learn to be more resilient. And of course, I think within the industry, we all know that we can't fight alone. So I do hope to see that within the security community, there will be more sharing. Matt mentioned about threat intelligence. I think this is also one thing that I felt is going to help us as the industry by able to share information or some best practices. So I would say that turn the crisis into something that everyone can work together and we emerge, become stronger, more resilient.
Right. Thanks, Chris.
Well, as a closing note, I would say that this pandemic really is teaching us how to be more innovative, creative, and agile. We have to be more responsive in a good way, because it's taking us out of our comfort zone. It's no longer like you have just simply hygiene practice, but you need to be understanding of the situation and how you adapt to the situation. It's going to be part of your arsenal already, the proactiveness and the responsiveness, no longer the just defensive mechanism that you have a checklist to follow, but it tells you that even if you follow the checklist, it doesn't necessarily mean you're immune to attacks. So when an attack happens, and it will happen, you need to have a good response mechanism, and that really challenges your the way you adapt, the way how fast you are, the speed, and how quick you organize the right people, especially in this challenging situation, right? You no longer have a team that's in the office, 9 to 5, that they can just work together whenever there's an issue. You have people that you have to scrum for 15 minutes, for example, who are in different places.
Right.
So the responsiveness, the agility must be there.
Right. Thanks, Max. So appreciate you gentlemen for the closing comments and also the insights that you provided to the various issues that we're facing in the challenging times we have today. So I'd like to conclude the panel. Thank you again, and we look forward to engaging our customers as well from Fortinet. And stay safe and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.